Welcome to Insight Builder channel, large language model automators, Python experts, and my dear friends. Improving AI shop, integrating Argilla's feedback dataset and collecting live records. The theme of this video is to improve the AI shop that we worked in the earlier video, and we are going to collect the data points that the users of the AI shop and the customers of the AI shop work with. So that's our intention, and we are going to do it using the Django backend. And also we will be working with the Argilla SDK for this particular activity. So what is the improving of AI shop means? In the AI shop, the key attraction is to have the artificial language models, the large language models, to do the analysis for you from the using the data that is provided to us, correct? But the large language models are not perfect, so there are lots of challenges. The outputs from the large language model is different from what you want. Sometimes the prompts are not sufficiently well made, and sometimes the output that you get is not what you want. All these things, the large language models have the shortcomings. But how to improve that? So the idea is to have a concept called as fine tuning, and for fine tuning the models you need to have the datasets, and the datasets have to be created in such a way that you can easily fine tune the models. So for that we can use Argilla. So that's where the Argilla comes into picture. Argilla is a very extensive and well streamlined library in Python. It's not just a library, it's a server in fact, which has both front end and back end. We'll be seeing that in action, which helps you to curate the datasets, and not just curate, it also helps you to annotate and store and even train the large language models. We will be only looking at collecting and also a little bit of annotating in this discussion, right? So let's dive into the demo right away. Let's go into the demo. This particular link that you're seeing here, the channel, you can actually take it this video where I started this series of discussions on the AI shop. So this is the second video on this series of videos. Going to the AI shop, actually this is the shop that I was talking about. It has got customers and it has got purchase lists, and you can actually query the LLM in this area. But you can also do one more thing. You can actually connect to Argilla and you can disconnect from Argilla. So what is the connection going to do? So once I connect to Argilla, what will happen is this particular server that you see here, this is a test Argilla server that is running in Hugging Face Hub. If you guys are new to Argilla and have no clue of what is going on, there is an entire series that I have made on Argilla. You can take a look at that. If you are keen about developing AI softwares, and if you are also working on AI models, then understanding how the datasets can be curated is very, very important. So you can take a look at this playlist that will give you a good background on that. Fine. So once I click on Connect Argilla, so once I do this, what will happen is in the backend the things will start running, and you'll see that this kind of an update happens. So it creates a dataset in the Argilla server, and you'll see that there is no records at this moment, so it's pending. Next, if you go to home, and you can see that here there's a batch that has come up. It's saying feedback dataset shop dataset created. So that's what this batch is telling. Now I can actually look at some couple of customers. I can look at some purchases that has been already done, and I can ask, okay, let me ask what items has Cindy purchased. So this is the question that I am going to ask to the LLM. You can actually ask local LLMs also. Both of these things I'll be explaining how it is done in this case. I'm going to query the LLM, and this is going to query the LLM, and it is going to get the response. Once it gets the response, it's going to do two things. It's first of all going to populate the reply. You can see that Cindy has purchased, you can look at the output, pasta with tomato and basil. So that's what she has purchased. And if you can look at the answers, if you scroll down, there are lots of questions that I have been testing it out. and at the end you can see Cindy has purchased these things, right? That's not all. If you go back to here and if you refresh this page, you'll see that what we asked in the front end is also updated in the back end also, and the prompt that was created here, if you can see the prompt that got created here, that prompt is also updated here. So the text, the user query, the prompt, and finally the response, all of these things are updated here, and you can actually provide the feedback here. This is the annotation process that I'm talking about. The annotator, if whoever is actually annotating it, annotators can elaborately explain the quality. So we can say the answer provided by the LLM is perfect, and we can submit it. So like this, the dataset, the information that the users are pushing to the artificial intelligence models can be collected, and it can be used at the backend, and we can do the annotation process. Once the annotation process is done, we can take the updated dataset and do the fine tuning. So as I already explained, so this is the entire demo that it is the entire flow that we are looking at, and now we will jump into a couple of important parts in this particular modification. So we have added a couple of things. We have added this two buttons. One is disconnect Argilla and connect Argilla. So if you click on disconnect Argilla, so it will say FBDS shop is disconnected, meaning if I do any of the queries right now, so let us say let us actually ask one more question. Let us say who bought Scotch eggs. So this is the question I'm going to ask: who bought Scotch eggs? And let us, who bought Scotch eggs? So that is the question, and this question that I'm asking will actually get reply from the large language model. You can see that the reply is coming from the large language model. Victoria Ramos has bought it, but if you go to the Argilla server, you'll see that the server is not updated, and you can see if you click on submitted, you will see there is only one record and there is no any pending records, meaning there is no any new record. That is happening because I have disconnected the Argilla server from the backend. So I'll be showing you how this happens in the backend, and it's a very simple process that I'm using for that. If I click on connect again, now you'll see it will take a second and you'll see that FBDS shop already present. So I am again back for business. So if I now again do let us actually take a look. Let us see Elizabeth Thomas. Yeah, what items what did Elizabeth purchase? Right, and this query will get recorded in the Argilla server. Also, it will get populated in the front end here. So Elizabeth purchased salmon nigiri, but it did not actually tell the other things that Elizabeth purchased. Meatball with sauce. This was not told by the LLM query. So if you go here and if you do a refresh now, so you'll see there are a couple of more records right now. Just a second. So once we clicked on the Connect Argilla back, so you'll see that there is a new pending record that has come up, which you can right now update. How many times lasagne is purchased, and you can see that there is an update given as lasagne is purchased 2 times. It is not telling who has purchased it, but it has given the information. So we can say the output is acceptable. So like this, you can do both. As the front end is working, you can actually get the details and push it to the back end also. So how is this being done? So that's what we are going to see next. So this is the views that we are going to discuss, but before that, I would like to walk through the steps so that we can see what's going on. So Argilla feedback dataset is created from the server itself. When we click this connect to Argilla, the dataset is created in the backend. How it is being done, I will be explaining it to you. Connected to the feedback dataset using the Argilla credentials. That is also a very simple process. create the records on the views function itself and push to Argilla server. So this is where a couple of important concepts we have to learn. But for this, you should also understand how the feedback dataset is configured as well as instantiated. Both of these things we will look into. We have to implement the logic to disconnect Argilla when not required. So when we click on this button, disconnect Argilla, what's happening? So how exactly the disconnect is being implemented, you will see it's pretty straightforward. And finally, update the front end to provide the UI. You see all these UIs here. So this is happening and it is actually instantiating the stuff in the views in the backend here. Fine. Next, what you're going to do is we are going to dive into the code. The code is going to consist of 3 new views that has been created. One is the integrate Argilla view. So let me zoom in a bit so you guys can see it better. This integrate Argilla. So what happens in integrate Argilla? The integrate Argilla starts by initializing the Argilla connection. So this initialization should be done for all the views. This is very, very important. When you are going to work with the APIs, which is outside the Django API, like in this case, we are going to work with Argilla server that is outside the Django server, correct? So you have to init the connection every time you want to do something on the server. So this particular command will do that for you. Next, we are going to call the workspace. We are going to create a workspace, or that workspace should be already present. And then we are going to create a text question. So this is a text question that is required for the feedback dataset. And this question is what going to help the annotated. So you see this here. So this is the text question that we are configuring. The reply feedback, its name is called as reply feedback. Checking how well the LLM is replying, and annotators can elaborate, explain. So all these things you saw in the UI just a moment ago, and it will be rendered using Markdown. So that is what you see in the questions. Next, you will create the feedback dataset. In order to create the feedback dataset, you have to have 2 minimum things, that is the fields and the question. So question we already created. Next is the fields. The fields that we want. So let us go back. The fields that we want are the user query, that the question that the user asked, the prompt that got generated. So this is a prompt that involves the actual SQL query itself, correct? So this in the backend, it's getting the SQL data and it is filling the forms here. So filling the prompt here, but this can be modified. So here I am, it's a simple process that I'm doing, but you can actually run a couple of other steps on this summary, this prompt, and you can modify that also. And then we have the LLM response. So these 3 things we require, and these 3 things are going to be the field here. So you can see that I have created 3 text fields. One is the question, the other is the prompt, and the third is the reply. And you can see the titles that you see in the UI that is provided here also. So these are all pretty straightforward to understand, but you need to practice for intuitively getting what is happening. If you look at it from the video perspective, and if you look at it from the the code that has been written here, you might actually miss a lot of stuff. You have to write the code, execute it, and see what happens. Then only you will understand it in more deep fashion. After the fields have been created, I am attaching the question that I created here, and then I am giving the guidelines also, and no metadata properties and no vector settings. These things are a little more advanced. You can look at the Argilla playlist that I already provided. So this is how you configure the feedback dataset. Once the dataset is configured, all you need to do is push to Argilla. Once you push it to Argilla, you have to give the name and you have to give the workspace. So that will be done. And once that pushing is done, so I will just return the context telling that using the Argilla key, telling that feedback DS shop dataset has been created. So this is what you see when you see here. So this is the update that you see in the output. So if I say Connect Argilla, you'll see the output here in a second. So you'll see this green updates. So this is coming from this particular key. In case if there is an error, at that time what will happen is, like for an example, you are already connecting to Argilla, and if there is an error, then what will happen is it will actually jump to this exception and it will try to render that FBDS shop already present. So only when the Argilla dataset is already present, this kind of an error will pass. So I have actually created this kind of error reply. But there are other reasons also the exception can get created. So that is as you get into the development, you will find different errors that comes up, and different exceptions you will try to accept. So that's how it works. But here I have chosen the easier route. Next thing that you see here is this particular variable. So this particular variable is a global variable. So if you go up, I have created this global variable at the top. So if you scroll up to the view, you will see that after the imports have been completed, I have created this Connect global variable. So this variable I have initiated it to none. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this variable as a reference to decide whether the API, Django API, is connected with the Argilla server or not. So this is how I decide. As of now, when there is none, it means that it is not connected. Okay, none or false, both means that it is not connected. When it is true, that means it is connected. So that's how it works. So in this case, what I'm doing is, when I'm going to click on the first time, when I'm going to click connect on the first time, this is going to excuse me. So this has to be there in both the places. Let me do that. So whether you are going to do it for the first time, whether you are going to create the FBDS for the first time, or whether it is going to create it for the multiple times, your Connect has to be true. So whenever I am going to integrate Argilla, the Connect will become true. Okay. Now this particular integrate Argilla view is going to be imported in the URLs, and I am going to create a path. And in the path, this path is what I am going to update in the index.html. So sorry, I'm going to update it in the header. So once I update in the header, you will see that this button gets updated here. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the server. So in order to disconnect the server, it's pretty simple. All I need to do is I need to take this global argument and I need to change it to false. Nothing else. So if I am going to click on connect, then arg connect variable will become true, and if I'm going to click on disconnect view, then it will become false. And once it becomes false, then the data that is getting pushed to Argilla will not happen. So how that logic is implemented is what we are going to see next. This disconnect Argilla also I'm creating as a separate path here, deconnect. So that's what I've created, and this path is what you see in this area. So you can see in the bottom here, or once I click on disconnect, you can see that it becomes deconnect, and you can see that it's updated as disconnected. So this is happening because of this view, right? Fine. But where is exactly the data sets or the data points are getting pushed? Because here what you are seeing is that the feedback data set is configured. It's not actually having any records, right? This looks like a blueprint, correct? It's not actually having records. So the records are actually created on the fly in the views itself. So if you scroll up, you'll see that the views that we'll be using, there are two views that we use for connecting with the large language models. That is get Olama LLM request. That is one thing. And then we have get LLM request. So that is for OpenAI. So this view. So in this view, all the things are same, except I'm calling this global Connect. This particular variable I'm going to use as a reference. And here you can see that I am connecting to the feedback dataset. So this particular line connects to the feedback dataset, and this command, as I already told, every view you need to connect to the Argilla server separately, or else it will not work, because the session gets completed the moment the view execution returns. If the execution returns in this area, or if it executes and returns in this area, then the Argilla connectivity is dropped. So you need to again and again, whenever you are going to call the get LLM or get OLLM, you have to initiate this. And next is this particular connection to the FBDS shop. And after that, rest of the things are same. Only thing that will be different is when you come and when you're going to send the reply back to the user. So before you render the output, so this is where the output is rendered, and after this output is rendered, you will see the output in the front end. So these outputs, before it comes to the front end, what we are going to do is we are going to catch it and we are going to send it to Argilla. So how are you going to do that? So the process to actually do that is that we are going to create a feedback record, right? We are going to create the fields called question, prompt, and reply. And we are going to take the text query, SQL analysis, that is a prompt, and reply LLM, all these things, put it into the fields. And then we are going to say these things as, you don't need to put metadata or vectors equal to none. This will throw an error. You don't need to do this. And then you need to add the records. After this, the record will get reflected in the Argilla server. So that's how it works. So if I submit it here, now you will see that I don't have any more pending records and I have 2 submitted records. So that is how it is getting pushed. Okay, now you will see I have actually what is that called, commented out here. So what I've done is, when I implemented this particular code, I realized that I need to write the same code not in one place but in 2 places. One is in get LLM view and another is in get OL LLM, that is the local LLM view also, because there also I will do the same thing, correct? So then I realized, in order to create a dry compliant code, I made a function. So if I follow this, you'll see at the top of the views function, I have created a Python function which takes the queries, SQL analysis, the reply LLM, the dataset name, and the workspace. All of these things are taken and the records are created here and the records are added here, and we get a logging info that the records are pushed. So let me go back. Let me pull this here. This is the server logs. Just a second. And you can see that there are lots of things happening. But if you look at this, you can see pushing the records to Argilla, pushed records. So you see this kinds of updates. So these things are coming from whenever I'm using this this particular function. So what happens is, let us go back to the bottom. So here, when all the process is done, so when I have got the response from the LLM, this is where I get the response from the LLM. I create the questions. This is the database object, questions table object. I'm saving the table object, and then above, when I am going to send the entire output back to the front end using the SQL analysis reply LLM, I am going to take the data that is already created here, and I am going to use this function using all these names. So this is the dataset name, this is the HFGilla workspace, and this is the actual feedback dataset object. So if you go up, you'll see that this is the feedback dataset object. You see that here. So this is the object, and then I send all these things and the record gets pushed. So this is how it works. And if our connect is false, meaning if I have disconnected from the server, Argilla server, then what will happen is this will be false and this push will not happen. So that's what we saw. By using a simple global variable, global variables are usually used in these kinds of setups, especially when you're going to work with a server and you want to disconnect for a particular view. You can actually use this. There are other methods also which is much more streamlined, but this method is pretty straightforward and you don't need to learn anything new for this. You have to just use a logic. So right now we have seen the entire process. So we actually reviewed how the demo works. We saw how we can connect the Argilla server to the AI shop that we have built already, and how we can use that to improve. So we have seen all these things. We saw how to improve, what are the things that is necessary for you to build the feedback record, the text question, the fields, and then creating the entire feedback record, pushing the feedback record configuration to the Argilla server. All these things we saw in the integrate view, and then we saw how to create the records on the fly when you are running the regular inference from the large language models using the views. And finally, we saw how to disconnect the Argilla server when it is not required. When you don't want to send the data to the Argilla server. So we saw all these things in this discussion, and I believe that you learned a thing or two from this video. So do leave your comments in the comment section and subscribe to my channel for further updates. I'll be discussing on WebSockets implementation using in this particular AI shop next, and stay tuned for that. Till the next video, practice, explore, practice, explore. See you guys. Have a great time.